Extraordinary rescue of a freezing mother dog and her 5 puppies reveals a transformative bond. The biting wind whipped across the frost-laden ground as Sarah hurried towards her battered van parked behind the old auto shop. It was a place she rarely visited, but today was different. Something curled at the edge of her heart as she stumbled upon a fragile sight. A mother dog, fiercely protective yet trembling, surrounded by 5 shivering puppies. Her breath hitched, a visceral shock in the pit of her stomach. Memories of her father, the veterinarian whose gentle hands and warm smile once comforted her, flooded her thoughts. The cold echoed not just around her but within, amplifying her isolation after his passing. How could she, a woman on the brink of losing everything, take on this responsibility? As she knelt next to the huddle of warmth, doubt gnawed at her. Could she really save them? Her veterinary practice was crumbling, squeezed by an unforgiving economy and the dismissive stares from neighbors like Mrs. Hargrove, who believed Sarah was unworthy of her father's legacy. The elderly woman's judgment stung worse than the cold. It was as if Mrs. Hargrove could sense the weakness that lurked in Sarah's heart. The very instinct to help these animals twisted inside her. Would it be selfish to extend her limited resources further? Or was it time to step into her father's shoes, even if they felt too big? As she wrapped the tender warmth of the puppies against her chest and coaxed the mother dog to trust her, a flicker of determination ignited. She wouldn't let them face the bitter cold alone. But with every step down the street to her modest home, that determination wrestled with fear. The weight of bills, a stagnant practice, and lingering grief for her father bore down on her like the winter snow piling high. What if they got sick? And if they did, with her finances tightening like a noose, how would she afford treatment? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Weeks passed in a blur. Even as Sarah prepared a warm space in her home, the puppies began to cough and sneeze, their tiny bodies succumbing to an unforeseen virus. Panic clawed at her throat. What if she lost them? The more time she spent caring for them, the thinner her own resolve grew. Late nights were littered with research, where she swallowed whole the pages at the library, haunted by the feeling of inadequacy. Each pitiful whimper from the puppies sliced through her toughened skin, reigniting old insecurities. Her father's legacy, the disapproval from her community, and the harsh reality of being a single mother on the edge. Just when her world felt as if it was collapsing around her, a familiar face emerged. Dr. Stanton, the retired veterinarian who had once offered glimpses of wisdom to her father, stepped into her life. His kindness wrapped around her, instinctively pulling her back from the brink. Yet, with his arrival came the dawning awareness that she was not only fighting for the lives of the dogs, but for her own place within a community quick to judge. Would this mentorship reveal the strength she had buried deep within? Or would it all come crashing down under the weight of Mrs. Hargrove's scrutiny, now sharper than winter's bite? The storm wasn't just outside. It loomed dangerously close, and Sarah would need every ounce of courage she had left to face it. The battle for her identity, and for the family she had just begun to build, was only beginning. The following morning brought a sense of urgency that sliced through Sarah's sleep-deprived haze. The sickly puppies whined softly, their tiny bodies curled together on the makeshift bed she had created in her living room. The weight of their plight hung heavily on her, a constant reminder of her renewed responsibility. Dr. Stanton's visit yesterday had injected her with a mix of hope and fear, but today she needed to make a choice, an action that might define her path forward. At breakfast, Sarah spent a few moments staring blankly at her coffee cup, swirling the liquid in quiet contemplation. What Dr. Stanton proposed had both thrilled and terrified her. He suggested a community veterinary clinic, a place she could work while helping care for stray animals, including those in need of urgent medical attention. But could she really commit to something so expansive? The thought of taking the leap seemed daunting. Her own practice struggled to stay afloat. How could she even consider opening her heart and her time to a much larger commitment? She set her mug down resolutely, a surge of determination coursing through her. It was time to confront her fears, the ones that had kept her stagnant for so long. A shiver of anxiety simmered beneath her skin as she gathered the needed paperwork for the clinic proposal. What if her community rejected her? What if they still believed she hadn't earned a place in her father's legacy? But before she could allow the doubts to snatch her determination, Sarah remembered the way the mother dog had looked at her. That spark of trust against all odds. It was time for her to trust herself. Stepping outside, the cold air hit her, invigorating and sharp. With each breath, she envisioned her father standing beside her, encouraging her not to back down. She made her way to the community center where Dr. Stanton was already waiting for her. Their discussions turned into planning, and with each suggestion he made, confidence bloomed within Sarah. She realized she had the skills, the compassion, and, perhaps most importantly, the experience that could strengthen this new venture. However, with excitement came the unwanted imagery of Mrs. Hargrove's disapproving gaze. The woman's bitterness affected Sarah more than she wanted to admit, her judgments echoing in her mind, trying to pull her back into that overwhelming sea of self-doubt. It was a reminder that true success would not simply manifest. She had to both prove herself and confront the skepticism aimed her way. As the sun dipped low in the sky, staining everything in warm hues, Sarah knew this was just the first step. Thousands of details lay ahead. The funding, the volunteers, the outreach to a community that might not accept her so easily. The shadows danced ominously as if mocking her uncertain footing. But she had done the impossible by saving the dogs. Perhaps this was just the beginning of something bigger. Her heart beat with new purpose, spurred on by her growing connection to the puppies and the mother dog waiting at home. Each declined appointment at her clinic reminded her of the potential they represented, not only for survival, but for resurgence as a veterinarian who cared deeply. Arriving home, she stared at the little ones sleeping soundly, their tiny bodies rising and falling with pacifying rhythms. The unassuming huddle of fur ignited a spark of excitement. Tomorrow, she would not only return to the clinic for another daunting meeting, but would also consider seeking out organizations that could offer resources. Yet just as she began documenting a plan, a sudden knock interrupted her thoughts, pulling her focus. The weight of uncertainty settled in again. She opened the door, bracing herself for whatever awaited her on the other side. Had Mrs. Hargrove come to deliver another scathing remark? Or was it a different visitor entirely, bearing news that would shift her path once again? The unexpected interactions that lay ahead promised to challenge not just her resolve, but her belief in herself as a worthy successor to her father's legacy. Sarah opened the door cautiously, her heart pounding as she prepared for the onslaught of judgment or unsolicited advice. Standing on her doorstep was not Mrs. Hargrove, but a tall woman in a thick winter coat, her cheeks flushed from the frigid air. A small, fluffy puppy nestled in her arms, its eyes wide and curious. "Hi, I'm Jenna," the woman said, her voice warm and inviting. "I found this little one abandoned near the park. I heard you might know what to do with strays." The breath Sarah had been holding escaped her in relief. Jenna's presence felt like an unexpected turn on her path, sparking a flutter of possibility. "Come in," Sarah said, stepping back to allow her inside. As Jenna handed the puppy over, Sarah felt a connection form, a shared sense of purpose igniting within her. "Thank you for bringing him to me. It's been a tough few days," Sarah admitted, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "What do you mean?" Jenna asked, concern threading through her words. Sarah hesitated, the weight of her struggles blinking through her guard. "I'm trying to start a community clinic to help strays and those who need medical attention. It feels overwhelming," she confessed, feeling her courage burgeon in the presence of this supportive stranger. Jenna's eyes lit up, a glimmer of admiration evident. "That's amazing. I've always wished there was a place like that. I know some people who might want to help, maybe sponsor it, or even volunteer." Just as that flicker of hope began to grow in Sarah, another reminder of her self-doubt intruded. But what if no one is interested? What if this all fails? Her voice trembled, revealing her fears of failing again. It was all too easy to envision the doubters, Mrs. Hargrove's haughty disapproval clouding her thoughts. You know, every journey starts with someone taking a chance, Jenna answered gently. You're already doing it. Look at this puppy you saved, and those other pups at home. You have the passion. They'll feel it. The conviction in Jenna's words struck a chord deep inside Sarah, calling forth the spirit she thought she had buried beneath layers of doubt. Encouraged by the unexpected conversation, Sarah felt a determination solidify in her chest. This small gathering of pseudo-strays, an abandoned puppy in need of a home and a fellow dreamer, felt strangely reminiscent of her own struggles against the perceptions that haunted her. Later that evening, while jotting down notes to refine her proposal, Sarah's mind raced with the possibilities of enlistment. The community needed this clinic, and she was more than capable of leading the effort. Reflecting on Jenna's words, she added a list to her notebook: local businesses, pet supply stores, anyone who might be willing to listen to her vision and become part of it. But beneath the bubbling excitement, shadows of doubt crept in. She imagined walking into those businesses only to be met with rolled eyes and lingering mistrust. The weight of expectation felt heavier than it had moments before, and she squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, trying to shoo the impending tsunami of anxiety away. As she formulated a plan, a ghost of determination clawed at her from the inside. What if every refusal, every doubter's glare, led her one step closer to finding the support she desperately needed? The puppies were counting on her. She could not let her fears strip away this opportunity. Running her hand through her hair, she stood up and paced the room, her restless energy pulsing through her veins. Tomorrow would be the day she reached out. With one more deep breath, she allowed herself to imagine a reality where she transformed her father's legacy into something groundbreaking, a sanctuary for those in need. But suddenly, a chilling thought sliced through her optimism. What if Mrs. Hargrove caught wind of her plans? What would her disdain mean for Sarah's already fragile confidence? The looming confrontation seemed inevitable, a storm cloud threatening to rain on her newfound ambition. As Sarah stared at the dim light illuminating her kitten's bed, uncertainty resurfaced, layering over her resolve. What if her actions led to even more fallout than she could handle? She had to confront not only the skeptics, but also her own internal turmoil. Determined to begin, she reached for her phone, naming it her first step toward outreach. The time had come to face her fears, to challenge herself to reshape what success looked like. She had to decide, was she ready to embrace this new reality, or would she retreat into the safety of her doubts? With trembling fingers, she began scrolling through her contacts, the face of her father filling her mind one last time before hitting dial. The journey toward clarity and self-acceptance lay open before her, yet its destination remained shrouded in uncertainty. Would she have the strength to walk this path as the door to her father's legacy swung wide open? The morning sun poured through the window, illuminating the scattered papers on Sarah's kitchen table. Each sheet bore the weight of her aspirations and fears, creating a kaleidoscope of her ambitions splattered with doubt. She stared at them, the relentless urge to flee her own plans gnawing at her heart. Today she had agreed to meet Jenna again. The promise of support flickered in Sarah's mind, but looming uncertainties held her feet to the ground. Would Jenna's enthusiasm translate to action, or would it wither against the harsh sunlight of reality? This meeting felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, peering into the unknown depths below. Breath steady, she gathered her notes, flipping through her pages of potential partnerships, goals, and the quick sketches she had doodled of the clinic's layout. With each turn of the page, fear threatened to smother her resolve. What if it all fell apart? Ignoring the thought, she picked up the phone to text Jenna, confirming the time for their meetup. The simplest actions now felt monumental, like daring leaps into a vast abyss. Once at the cafe, Sarah felt their eyes on her, the barista's curious glances slicing through her facade. The clattering of cups and lively chatter blurred around her as she passed the threshold, seeking comfort amidst chaos. That was until she spotted Jenna seated at the back, her animated gestures pulling Sarah in like a magnetic force. "Hey you," Jenna beamed, already waving as if they were lifelong friends. An unexpected warmth spread through Sarah, momentarily amplifying the stirrings of hope in her chest. They quickly fell into discussions about strategies and resources. Jenna spoke passionately about potential donors she knew, vibrant circles of local support that Sarah had yet to tap into. Each suggestion felt like stepping stones toward a tangible reality, a bridge across Sarah's turbulent doubts, a lifeline into uncharted territory. However, when Jenna asked, "When do you plan to pitch your idea to those businesses?" Sarah's heart sank. The weight of her answer hung like an albatross in the air. I don't know." The honesty surprised Sarah. It was a counterproductive admission, filled with the self-doubt that had held her prisoner for far too long. "What if they see me as a nobody, just like Mrs. Hargrove?" she continued, her voice trembling with unmasked vulnerability. Jenna leaned in, her expression unyielding. "They will see your passion, they'll feel it. You carry a story, use it." But stories are complex, Sarah thought. Her past was not just a tale of triumph. It bore scars that ran deep, rooted in the legacy of a man she both admired and resented. What if I fail? What if I can't live up to those expectations? Internal conflict surged within her. The fear of not being enough gnawed, persistent and vile. "Failure is part of growth, Sarah. Isn't that why you're here?" Jenna's words pierced through the storm of Sarah's thoughts, forcing her to confront the truth she had long tried to bury. "You're not alone in this." As they parted ways, Jenna gave her one last encouraging hug that sent ripples of warmth through Sarah's guarded heart. In that moment, she realized perhaps it was time to let others in, to permit vulnerability and strength to coexist. Walking home, the sun dipped low in the sky, a fiery explosion of color reminding her of her purpose. She would craft that clinic, no matter the challenges ahead. Sarah could no longer afford to be haunted by whispers of doubt. She would face her fears head-on. Arriving home, she found herself at her desk once again, transforming hesitation into action, drafting an email to a local pet supply store owner she had found while researching. Each word became a brick, building toward the dream she had thought impossible. With each keystroke, her confidence solidified like cement forming beneath her feet. But as the final click confirmed the message sent, a sinking feeling wrapped around her stomach. What if Mrs. Hargrove discovered her ambitions and decided to dismantle everything? The thought festered like a doubt she'd chased away. The personalized hell she had escaped from threatened to pursue her yet again. Standing to face the gloom of uncertainty, Sarah realized that confrontation was not just inevitable, it was essential. She had to confront the figure that loomed over her past, if she ever wanted to step fully into her future. Could she find the courage to reclaim her narrative, or would the specter of Mrs. Hargrove continue to shadow her every move? The impending confrontation felt imminent, an uncharted land she would have to brave. Tomorrow would not only be about outreach, it would be about standing her ground. As the sun peeked through the curtains the next morning, the warmth felt like an invitation to embrace the day. Sarah lingered in bed, the familiar tendrils of anxiety twisting around her thoughts. Today was not just another ordinary day. It was her moment to confront the shadow of Mrs. Hargrove who loomed over her dreams, threatening to suffocate her ambitions. She tossed aside the blankets and took a deep breath, whispering a silent promise to herself. Today, she would reclaim her story. The dogs at the shelter, the lives she longed to change, and the clinic that danced in her dreams deserved her courage. She envisioned it as a safe haven, an establishment equipped to heal those neglected and in pain, mirroring her own psyche's wounds. After a quick shower, Sarah stood in front of the mirror, the steam still lingering around her like a comforting shroud. As she applied her makeup, she practiced her pitch in her head, projecting warmth and determination into the reflection staring back at her. It wasn't just about selling an idea, it was about unveiling her truth and the passion that sparked it. Once dressed, the scent of the rice dish she'd prepared earlier wafted through her modest kitchen. After a small breakfast of toast, she opened her laptop and stared at the email drafts, messages meant for potential partners she could collaborate with. Each name carried a legacy of her fears, yet they were also tied to the acknowledgement of her aspirations. She quickly typed out a few more emails, trying to find the right words to articulate her vision. But the lingering thought of Mrs. Hargrove gnawed at her mind again. What if the past returned to haunt her? What if the woman who had meant safety and security for her was now a harbinger of despair? She decided then and there that excuses would get her nowhere. Only action would invite change. At 10 o'clock, Sarah arrived at the local community center, where Mrs. Hargrove often held her informal meetings with various stakeholders. Each step felt heavy with uncertainty as she crossed the threshold. The walls were adorned with photographs of past events, moments of joy that felt distant and unrelated to her own experience. As she entered the main room, she spotted Mrs. Hargrove conversing with a group of older women, laughter spilling from their conversation like a gentle stream. Sarah's heart pounded. She focused on that urge to flee, but redirected it toward standing her ground. Today was pivotal. "Sarah!" Mrs. Hargrove exclaimed, spotting her. The women turned, and Sarah felt their curious gazes peel back layers of her self-doubt. "I'm glad to see you here. Want to join us?" The warmth of the invitation tugged at her instincts to retreat. Seeing the women genuinely happy, with Mrs. Hargrove radiating a maternal warmth, threatened to disarm her resolve. Yet, she planted her feet firmly instead, considering this moment an opportunity. "No, thank you," Sarah heard herself say. "I was hoping to speak with you, Mrs. Hargrove." The change in her voice surprised her. It was steadier than she anticipated. She expected to see a flash of irritation, but Mrs. Hargrove merely nodded, her face inscrutable. "Of course. Let's chat." As the women left the room, the tension thickened. Sarah felt suspended between the woman who once represented safety and the realization of everything she feared to confront. "I'm starting a clinic for rescue animals," she began, her voice unwavering. "I want to provide the community with a place to bring in pets in need." Mrs. Hargrove's brow furrowed. "And you think this is a wise move? You do remember your last attempt, don't you?" The specter of her past rumbled, igniting an instinctual flutter in Sarah's chest. "I do," she replied, steadying herself. "And I believe I've grown past those limitations. This time it's different." A charged silence settled between them, and Sarah braced herself against self-doubt. The confrontation was not only with Mrs. Hargrove, but with the remnants of her own fears. Would this meeting seal her fate in a cycle of self-doubt, or would it be a pivotal step forward? "In that case, I wish you good luck, Sarah," Mrs. Hargrove said finally, the hint of a challenge lingering in her tone, as if she were watching to see how far Sarah would go. Taking a deep breath, Sarah realized this was the first step, one that forged the path ahead. But the question loomed. How much of her past would she have to confront to fully take hold of her future? Almost instinctively, she could feel the stakes rising, a darker narrative threading its way through her previously optimistic aspirations. No longer was she merely facing Mrs. Hargrove. She was wrestling with the ghosts of her own trepidations. As she exited the room, the question echoed persistently. Could she defy the past and forge a new future? Or would she remain tethered to memories meant to limit her? Tomorrow's meeting would not only be about securing partnerships, it would be about proving to herself if she truly possessed the courage to change her narrative. As the sun cast long shadows across the floor of her tiny apartment, Sarah couldn't shake off the sense of urgency pulsing within her. Each email she drafted in anticipation of the upcoming meeting felt as though it was chiseling away at the doubts embedded in her mind. The stakes were increasingly high. Tomorrow would be the defining moment that laid a foundation for her future. Returning from the community center, her thoughts tumbled over one another, echoing Mrs. Hargrove's voice. "You remember your last attempt, don't you?" The insinuation lingered like an unwelcome guest. Would she always be measured by past failures? As she sat at her kitchen table and fidgeted with her notebook, the mere act of putting pen to paper transformed into a battle of wills, her resolve fighting against those insidious whispers of inadequacy. She needed to grasp the thread of conviction that had sparked during her confrontation with Mrs. Hargrove. Taking a deep breath, Sarah allowed herself a moment of reflection. What had propelled her to this point? It was the thought of the animals in need, the helpless eyes of dogs and cats waiting for a savior. They were her motivation, an embodiment of her own struggles. With renewed determination, she scribbled out a clearer vision for her clinic, outlining key partnerships and services that could address not only animal welfare, but also community engagement. This wasn't just about creating a facility. It was about fostering a culture of compassion and responsibility amongst pet owners. Yet, doubt clawed at her resolve. What if those partnerships fell through? What if no one believed in her like she believed in herself? Each question was a flicker of darkness that threatened to snuff out the flame of her hope. She wrestled with the fear of being judged, a ghost of the past stubbornly clinging to her psyche. With every stroke of the pen, Sarah made an intentional stand against that looming shadow. Financial projections, potential sponsors, and outreach strategies spilled onto the pages, each word grounding her aspirations in reality. It was tangible proof that she could be more than the failures that haunted her. As evening crept in and the aroma of her familiar rice dish filled the kitchen, Sarah decided to lean into the fear instead of retreating from it. Each kernel of rice represented not just her past, but possibilities, each grain a fragment of hope waiting to be nurtured. Later that night, as she prepared for bed, Sarah felt a surge of excitement crashing over her insecurities. She envisioned the space filled with wagging tails and grateful families. True, tomorrow's meeting with potential partners would be daunting, but this wouldn't be just another attempt. She was poised to transform it into a launching pad for her dreams. However, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a wave of anxiety washed over her once more. The prospect of failure loomed like a storm on the horizon. Did she truly possess the tenacity needed to endure the relentless scrutiny of those around her? What if she stumbled when it mattered most? Caught in this whirlwind of emotions, Sarah rolled onto her side, whispering a mantra she hoped would fortify her spirit. I am not my mistakes. I am my courage. The words rang with warmth yet felt fragile as she drifted into an uneasy sleep, the shadow of doubt lingering at the edges of her consciousness. As the night deepened, Sarah's mind spun with dreams of success intertwined with memories of despair. Yet, the door to potential waited just beyond the dawn. Could she embrace that possibility, or would she succumb to the fears that had long held her captive? Tomorrow would demand more than just a pitch. It would require an unwavering commitment to rewrite her story completely. Would she have the strength to confront the tenacious voices of doubt and rise to meet her future? The morning light sliced through the thin curtains of Sarah's apartment, rousing her from fragmented dreams of critters in need. Today was the day, an intersection of hope and fear. As she swung her legs out of bed, a rush of adrenaline propelled her forward. She could no longer hide behind the thick veil of her insecurities. She polished her pitch, the urgency of the task sharpening her focus. What was it she wanted to convey? That her vision wasn't just feasible, it was essential. An animal clinic could change lives, not just for the pets, but for their caretakers. The power of transformation burned fiercely within her, demanding to be expressed with clarity. With every product of her fervor, her budget outlines, service proposals, and partner outreach, she noticed herself inching away from the shadows of doubt. Each document became a testament to her belief that she could create something meaningful. But just as quickly, doubts began to surge. What if the board members were swept away by the more established clinics? Was her ambition too naive? The clock ticked mercilessly, echoing the countdown of moments slipping away. Each second that passed heightened her sense of urgency. She was no longer simply hoping for change. She had to anchor herself in the certainty that she had what it took to rise. An unwavering commitment flared within her, igniting a burning question. What was the worst that could happen? Riding waves of anxiety, Sarah dove into her mental toolkit. Visualization became her ally. She mentally practiced her presentation as if she were ensuring every detail of a delicate animal rescue mission. It required precision, empathy, and the ability to adapt under pressure. The image of countless grateful families and wagging tails swarmed her mind's eye, enveloping her in warmth despite the fear prickling at her skin. In a moment of clarity, reality struck. She wasn't just attempting to gather funds or support. She was forging a bond, creating a bridge between lives once full of suffering and hope. As she gathered her materials, Sarah caught the reflection of her own determination in the mirror. With each glance, she encouraged herself. She willed her reflection to see a woman ready to face the world. Arriving at the meeting, the air thick with anticipation struck her like a wave. The boardroom was intimidating, polished surfaces glinting under fluorescent lights, but as she marched towards them, a sense of inevitability washed over her. This wasn't merely about her project, it was a chance to redefine her identity. She was here to be heard, to rise to the occasion, to command respect. As she began her presentation, speaking with conviction about her vision, her mind surged with thoughts of the dogs and puppies that needed her. They were silent sentinels cheering for her success, reminding her of the invaluable purpose fueling her ambitions. These vivid images of helpless animals intertwined with her voice, adding an emotional depth that resonated in the ultimate pitch. But just as she reached a crescendo, disruption rocked her confidence. A sudden question from one of the board members, challenging her parameters and profitability projections. The tension in the room crackled, a storm of scrutiny washing over her resolve. Sarah's heart raced as she contemplated her response. Could she overcome this unexpected blow, or would it be yet another moment marking her as unworthy? The stakes had never felt higher, and every ounce of determination was now directed at transforming this challenge into an opportunity. Behind the thick glass wall of the conference room, hope loomed, intangible yet tantalizing. Would she find the strength to navigate this confrontation head-on, or would the doubts once again grip her spirit as they always had? The challenge hung in the air, suffocating and undeniable, and as the question lingered, a flood of competing thoughts crashed against Sarah's mind. She was confronted with the board member's critical gaze, eyebrows raised with skepticism. How could she articulate her vision while fighting against the rising tide of self-doubt? In that instant, she realized that this was not merely a question about her clinic's profitability. It was a question about her worthiness, her ability to stand in a room full of established voices and not allow her own to falter. She took a breath, grounding herself in that turbulent moment. Thoughts raced through her mind, and she could almost hear her heartbeat thundering in her ears. There was no escape from the spotlight. Instead, she had to own it. I understand your concerns about profitability, she began, focusing on maintaining steadiness in her voice. However, if we look beyond the numbers, what we see is the potential for sustainable growth through community engagement and a strong mission-driven approach. The board was silent, their faces reflecting a mixture of intrigue and doubt. Could she sustain this momentum? Sarah pressed forward, channeling the emotions that had brought her to this table, the passion for animals in need, the vision of families reuniting with their pets, and the undeniable reality that she was fighting for something much larger than herself. Imagine not only serving the animals that come into our care, but also empowering their owners to make informed choices. By providing education and resources, we can create a ripple effect of responsibility and care. As she spoke, her confidence began to swell, fueled by the conviction that had held her when she first envisioned this clinic. She was no longer just defending her numbers, she was painting a picture of transformation. Still, the journey was rocky. The tension in the room remained palpable, and another member chimed in. But how do you plan to attract clients, especially in a market saturated with long-established clinics? Each question felt like an obstacle, but instead of stumbling, she saw them as stepping stones. By focusing on the underserved communities, we can fill a niche that has been overlooked. Providing affordable services and building a community-centered approach can bring not only awareness but loyalty as well. We will become a part of their lives, and they will know we are genuinely invested in their pets' well-being. Her words flowed with an urgency she hadn't felt before, as if she had unearthed a hidden reservoir of strength. She recognized this was her moment of truth, the opportunity to redefine not only the clinic, but also herself. Yet as she wrapped up her argument, the room remained tense. The glances exchanged among the board members communicated uncertainty. Perhaps her passion wasn't enough. The nagging doubt whispered its ugly refrain, but she shook it off. Would they see the merit? Unlock the potential she sensed blossoming? Sarah held her breath, feeling the weight of their gazes, searching for signs of approval. Just then, a board member who had been silent until now spoke up. You've painted an impressive vision, but we need meticulous planning. What contingencies would you implement if the initial projections fall short? The very essence of her spirit echoed in that inquiry, both a challenge and an invitation. Could she transform this moment of dread into inspiration, Could she confront not just the scrutiny but also the fears that had held her back in life? Silencing the voice of self-doubt, she prepared her response, ready to craft a plan rooted in resilience and ingenuity. Harnessing the vulnerability that surged within, Sarah realized she stood on the precipice of uncovering not just her plan for the clinic, but also her own identity. The thought invigorated her, solidified her purpose. A flicker of hope ignited in her. It could still go either way. Would they embrace her vision, or would the door close before it ever truly opened? As the room watched her, all eyes poised, she felt the stirrings of growth within her. What lay ahead in this confrontation could make or break her. In that decisive instance of uncertainty, Sarah met the eyes of her critics, ready to reveal both her resolve and her strategy. The tension thickened. The pivotal moment loomed dimly, daring her to claim it. Would this be her transformative breakthrough or an unraveling? In that split second, the worlds of expectation and potential collided within Sarah. She could feel the weight of their scrutiny intensifying as the silence stretched, almost tangible. The question posed was more than practical. It was a challenge to her very essence as a leader and a visionary. What did she have to lose by unveiling her most audacious ideas? "Contingencies are essential," she began, her voice unwavering despite the orchestra of anxiety within her. "We will incorporate tiered pricing models to accommodate different socioeconomic backgrounds, ensuring that while we serve our community responsibly, we also adapt dynamically to their needs. Additionally, I propose an ongoing evaluation of our services based on client feedback, not only to gauge satisfaction, but to pivot quickly in response to unforeseen challenges." The nods of the board members began as hesitations, but gradually morphed into cautious interest. She noted the way their postures shifted slightly, the way their brows unknitted, as if they were beginning to see her not just as a novice, but as a potential game-changer. Yet the path to realization felt ever staggering. Doubt still tugged at her as fragments of the past resurfaced. Moments of self-sabotage, the doubt that once defined her career ambitions. This time, though, a wave of clarity washed over her. The stronger she stood before them now, the more clearly she defined who she was, not just the owner of a clinic, but an advocate for a cause that had been unfulfilled for too long. Her passion ignited into a pulse that could be felt, a raw energy she was unafraid to share. "We'll establish partnerships with local universities for veterinary programs, creating an environment where students can gain hands-on experience while supporting our goals. This symbiosis will not only provide us with talented individuals eager to make a difference, but will also enrich their education and our clinic's offerings. Think of the goodwill generated within the educational community." But even as she spoke, a lingering apprehension pulsed at the back of her mind. Did the board possess the courage to embrace her vision? Was there a willingness to explore a new frontier rather than cling to the shadows of convention? As the last of her points slipped from her lips, Sarah found herself wondering if her own resolve could inspire belief in her plans. She felt the heat of a dozen foreboding gazes lingering. One wrong word could cascade into an avalanche of disapproval. Could she truly articulate the urgency of this initiative while drawing from her own reservoir of authenticity? Ultimately, she continued, pushing forward through her trepidation, by fostering genuine relationships with our clients through transparent communication and community involvement, we cultivate loyalty that no flashy marketing campaign can achieve. The room shifted. Tension hung in the air, emotions colliding, but Sarah could sense a broader connection forming as glances flickered between board members. Was it acceptance sparking, or merely polite acknowledgement of her effort? "Sarah, your insights are compelling," came another voice, this one softer, unyielding yet open. "But how will you fund these innovations, especially in a fragile economic environment?" Another test, one that brought her back to the bare essence of her journey. She'd faced limitations and leveraged them as fuel for creativity. "We'll pursue grants specifically aimed at animal welfare and the development of community-driven veterinary services," she launched into her next line of thought. "Moreover, a crowdfunding initiative can also contribute to expanding our reach and impact. We'll broadcast our mission directly to those who care, who see the value in compassionate care." With every word, she felt a fission of confidence radiate. She had entered the meeting as just another candidate struggling under the weight of uncertainty, yet she stood poised, a leader emerging, ready to confront adversity with clarity and strategy. As the discussion began to shift, Sarah could feel the turn of tides. Their expressions now reflected curiosity rather than skepticism. Yet what lay ahead felt both potentially liberating and terrifying. Would they support her approach? Would they celebrate her vision with the resources to help it thrive, or put up walls forged from fear of the unknown? With these thoughts lingering, an unexpected question broke through the ether, one that threatened to ripple through her newfound confidence. Are you ready to take ownership of this challenge? Not just for the clinic's success, but for your own future. And in that moment, the daunting truth crystallized for her. This journey was more than professional. It was profoundly personal. Sarah tightened her grip on the edge of the table, feeling the burgeoning responsibility surge through her. Could she? Would she balance the burden of ambition with the flames of vulnerability? The next moment would shape not just her career, but who she would become. With the board's future hanging in the balance, would she dare to embrace the resonance of the call that beckoned her toward greatness? Sarah emerged from the boardroom, her heart pounding a relentless rhythm of triumph and uncertainty. The path before her had transformed. No longer was she a mere participant in her own life. She had claimed her narrative. She had fought against the tide of doubt with logic and passion, presenting a vision not just to save herself, but to uplift her community. A profound realization settled within her. This wasn't just about opening a clinic anymore. It was about asserting her rightful place within her father's legacy and her own skin. As she walked past her former critics, she could feel the shift in their perception. They no longer regarded her solely through the lens of her past failures, but observed a resilient woman who had evolved from the confines of their expectations. For the first time, the weight of Mrs. Hargrove's judgment felt less like an anchor and more like a passing shadow. It no longer defined her. In the following days, Sarah mobilized her plans with renewed vigor. Armed with the board's conditional approval, she reached out to potential collaborators, resources that would fortify her mission. Every email she sent, each phone call she made, was infused with the conviction that had grown during that pivotal meeting. The response was overwhelming. The community she had once feared would reject her was beginning to rally behind her. Even Mrs. Hargrove, still a looming figure in her mind, had begun to shift. There were whispers of support, a growing acknowledgement of Sarah's determination both from her peers and the families she longed to help. As her clinic proposal gained traction, Sarah's confidence flourished. She watched the once fragile puppies she had rescued transform into buoyant, healthy dogs, under her care and the guidance of Dr. Stanton. They mirrored her evolution, a testament that resilience could conquer the harshest of circumstances. Her connections with Jenna deepened, and together they organized community outreach events focused on education and compassion towards animal welfare. The bond of their friendship forged a shared mission, delivering hope and support to those who had previously felt unseen. Sarah reveled in this camaraderie, her ache for belonging beginning to dissipate as she surrounded herself with allies who believed in her vision just as fervently. Then came the grand opening of her community clinic. Excitement surged through the neighborhood like a wildfire. The day was marked with laughter and joy, a celebration of rebirth for both the animals and those who cared for them. Families arrived with their pets. Sarah could see their gratitude reflected in their eyes, a visceral confirmation that she had made the right decision to rise up. As she toured the clinic, heart swelling with pride, she encountered Mrs. Hargrove, who approached with a strange softness in her eyes. "I never doubted your capability, Sarah," she said, that familiar edge of judgment replaced with a hint of admiration. "Your father would be proud of you." In that moment, Sarah felt the chains of the past slip away. Here stood validation, not just from Mrs. Hargrove, but from within herself. That evening, as she closed the clinic doors, a wave of satisfaction washed over her. She had stitched a patchwork of community and compassion to the fabric of her life. The stories of each animal she had saved intertwined with her own, matching the bond to her father's legacy she had once feared would elude her. Sarah sat in her apartment, a glass of wine in hand, reflecting on the remarkable journey of transformation. She had learned to harness her fears, to rewrite her narrative, and embrace the unknown. Her joy today was not simply the result of rescuing animals, but realizing she had carved her own path through the shattered remnants of self-doubt. She smiled, the reflected warmth filling her chest, a certainty settling firmly in her heart. She had achieved more than she ever imagined. She had built a sanctuary, not just for the animals, but for herself. A haven rooted in purpose, passion, and unwavering belief. This was the moment when she felt fully alive, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing her worth and the profound power of transformation. Now, we invite you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Don't wait even one more second to share.